Hello, it's November 11th, 2016. I'm Tony Samario. This is End Times Trending on BroSal.org YouTube channel. And there's, I thought since we did a little show right before the election in which I essentially said my perspective is that the whole thing is being played toward an end that is chaos. Now, I was wrong about the election. I went with the idea that Julian Assange was giving us, the naturally obvious truth. How can Trump win? How can this man win? It's not about the popular vote. In fact, he didn't even win the popular vote, at least according to something I saw. Because now you got this big idea that they're going to call for a revote. Now it's the Democrats who are sore losers, So it's... to follow that all on the surface and imagine that it's really real, then you have to have a basis for that. Do you imagine that this whole circus that you've been watching the last year is organic? The news channels have been giving you these. I mean, the world has given you these two candidates without questioning who they are and how it is that they expect the popular vote of Americans to lead the world, to be the leaders of this country in what's going on in the world. The very people that can be pointed to be either directly responsible for the mess, in the case of Hillary Clinton, or the type that has only a very superficial association with any possible mechanism by which to change things. A billionaire real estate guy on the surface just buying the narrative. Like Ross Perot some years ago. Everybody laughed at Ross Perot, but this time they didn't laugh at Donald Trump. Well, I mean, the rest, most of the world did, but I don't know, they say 50 million or whatever, 60 million that voted for him. But what I want to point out that's more important, I think, because I still say chaos is coming. Didn't matter who gets elected. They have a program. But what my dad's been pointing out in our conversations, because he saw that having watched this closely, this election, Dad saw that the way that they were the way that they were manipulating this election was in the favor of a Donald Trump presidency, in order to make drastic moves that only some sort of drastic change in the status quo could bring. And I think Dad was absolutely right. He was certainly right about the election going to Trump, but now, I say this is the important factor, you guys. All of the international news, as far as I can tell, speaks about afraid of what Donald Trump will do. Donald Trump will do this. Donald Trump will, disband the United Nations. Donald Trump will pull America. Can Donald Trump do that? I mean, really, and if that's the case, why has this not been so important for a year through all this circus of a media election year with the media hype? Why has the importance of the fact that whoever we put in, the criminal or the game show host, they're going to be able to disband the United Nations if they want to, personally. If Donald Trump thinks it's the best thing for the nation, well, that's just what we do. We put homosexual. We undo all the, because he can hire the Supreme Court, right? So this is why it's so important. He's got all the Republicans on his side. So Donald Trump can't do anything. What we're saying is the whole nation represented by this particular political mechanism called a president, a Republican Senate, a conservative Supreme Court. Now, are you going to tell me that just accidentally fell into place right now? The money behind all that didn't see it coming and think, do you know what's going to get done if we've got Donald Trump as president with this kind of a platform and a Republican Senate and a conservative judicial system that's in favor of his platform. So, I didn't see the resistance to that or even the education on what that means. And so what I see instead that you should read into it, I believe, is that whoever has been planning, putting their money into the manipulation of the world, trying to get somewhere. They're trying to get somewhere. And to get there, it's taken, Ronald Reagan to come and, Yahoo! We're going to beat those Russians finally, the cowboy, the good old boy, going to do it for America, red, white, and blue, old Ronnie Reagan, right? With the CIA, scoundrel George Bush, on his heels. And yet, what did we buy into? Deregulation and all the Cold War funneling of money into the military-industrial complex without any question. Why? Because we let Wall Street, and the banks, the central banks print money and make it a big boom time for people. So we all got to buy a bunch of crap that we were shipping the factories over to China. I mean, you can just imagine in their eyes, they had all this surplus, profit margin and stuff now because they went from a national-based manufacturing plant where everything got made in America that had a high standard of living to shipping all their factories overseas where all of a sudden they're making the same stuff at a quarter of the price at best, sometimes a tenth of the price. They didn't lose any market share, did they? They're just shipping it over back to the same customer in America. So that now all of a sudden you think of all the stuff they've got to give you to make you feel good about, essentially them enslaving you to debt and putting all of our money into a military-industrial complex. And what for? Because now we look back, there was no Cold War, but that's what they sold us. Try and reflect on history. Those that don't learn from history are destined to repeat it, I think is the way the saying goes. So we have this whole propaganda machine around the world talking about Trump is going to do this, Trump is going to do that. And so one of the things they've been talking about is that Trump is going to recognize the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. Not the American people feel this way. Isn't it odd? We're supposed to be this great democracy, and I don't hear one journalist pounce on the opportunity to point out that Donald Trump's supposed to be, the Senate, all these guys, even the Supreme Court are supposed to be speaking for the conscience of the people. So, it must be that the American people want to recognize Jerusalem and don't agree with the United Nations. And is there any such discussion? Do they do any such polling? I believe it's coming as part of all this chaos, but I say that's what you're going to look for now. It's what I'm looking for in the near future, because I find this interesting, right? Let me rattle off a few of these on my list. The U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, the recent UNESCO announcement that, that just sort of, I don't know, it sets everyone that grew up in my generation aback. I mean, the whole struggle in the Middle East has been around this two-state solution, the dividing of Jerusalem, the fact that it's the site of the Wailing Wall's still there, it's the old site of Solomon's Temple, it's the site of the current Al-Aqsa Mosque. There's just these, and then you got the Catholics that want their right to it because that's where their hero was, martyred. And so the fact that UNESCO, the United Nations, which again, go back and see who formed them, Rothschild money, 100 years ago almost, and at least the United Nations, I don't know when they formed UNESCO, but this was all done to facilitate getting Palestine. This is all part of, then the IMF comes out of that. I mean, if you don't see that they have a bigger plan than just rolling with, let's see who gets elected, don't you think then they could at least manipulate who might be elected so that whoever got elected was someone they could deal with. I mean, it's hard to believe that just this whole process that requires so much money, and this money that's been responsible for all the power through Wall Street, through the banking, through the control of politics and education for 100 years, suddenly they're just susceptible to Donald Trump? I doubt it. I doubt it. So the media carries this illusion that Donald Trump will do this and Donald Trump will do that, without ever anyone questioning, is that really is the American people saying that here's how they feel about these issues? So anyway, so you got the U.S. Embassy. Donald Trump wants to move it to Jerusalem. UNESCO says that Jerusalem essentially belongs to the Muslims, and the Jews and Christians got no right to it. Obama, coincidentally enough, or strangely, oddly enough, for an American president whose greatest lobby comes from this Israel lobby, who, despite his own staged anti-Israel stance, right? He signed over the $38 billion to him or whatever in military support or aid, foreign aid. So I'm just saying, I find it interesting that Obama has had a very anti-Israel stance, whereas Trump is a very outspoken proponent of Zionism in Israel. And then you got this other plans, not UNESCO, but the plans that everybody else has been working on most of my adult life for this shared mount, that they're going to divide Jerusalem and a two-state solution and all these things. They've been the peace plan. And so when you think about the shared mount and then the third temple, the plans that's already been okayed, that they've already gone ahead and they've got the temple, the Temple Institute, they've got the temple built, they know what they're going to do, they got the priests trained, they got all the, they're ready. So that's a lot of money to spend just to be ready if it's still, 100 years away, because nobody's going to dare let you sacrifice on that hill ever again. So, that, and then the prophecy itself, of course, that places these wars and rumors of wars of Jesus, the prophecy of Daniel, the prophecies that place that particular area and the hill of Jerusalem, the Holy Land, is this center that the end comes around. I mean, is this all a coincidence right now in history that, Trump wants to move the embassy to Jerusalem among all these other coincidences, the UNESCO sort of provocation, Obama's anti-Israel stance that's allowed that whole thing to just have its face so they could see who's anti-Israel, who do we got to watch out for now. And now Trump comes in super pro-Zionism, and supposedly he's speaking for the people, even though you got riots, supposedly, even if they're paid for. You have the pretense of dissatisfaction, complete, in most cases around the world. Everybody I know, every liberal-minded person is in absolute shock and wonder that anyone in their right mind could vote for this man or Hillary Clinton. Don't get me wrong. I don't see how you can vote for either of them or even pretend that system is going anywhere or should be supported or should take a breath of your life, a dollar of your money. I don't know. That's like riding a bumpy road toward a cliff that's going to drop you off of it to some sort of harm and not getting off the ride, but actually, counting the trees or something along the way. So, yeah, I don't find it a coincidence right now, the way the international news is announcing things like Trump will do this and Trump will do that, without even no one questioning, is this what the American people want? Is this really, is this the kind of thing you would expect any president to just come out and start doing things that they personally think should be done in spite of what the populace wants. You know, I mean, even if you got only half the population, you got half of them not wanting. I mean, so that's still a struggle. It shouldn't just be so obvious, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then the media is reporting Trump's going to do this, Trump's going to do that. Okay, anyway, I find that highly suspicious, and I find it highly coincidental that among this UNESCO announcement now we got the talk about moving the embassy to Jerusalem. And so I say that's all got to do with, if you know your true history, the people that really, you know, have the money and run the world, they want to build another temple in Jerusalem. That's what the prophecy says. These Khazarian Jews, these Europeans that have converted to Judaism, that's what they're waiting for. The Messiah is going to come back and rule in their temple. And so what they want to do is build their temple. And it looks like there's a conspiracy of the Zionist Christians and the Zionist Jews to build that temple. And I think that's what's going to lead to the great division and the Jewish people being killed down to a remnant, because the Zionist Christians are all Masons, and if you study it, they're probably Luciferians. I mean, they're either materialists or Luciferians, but it's odd that they all have, you know, they all follow this very religious sort of exterior, exoteric structure and persona. And the higher oaths are things that are quite, you know, mysterious and black magic. You know, they have all that sort of tone to them. They're not the sort of thing you'd expect from strict materialists. So there's a lot of evidence that the Masons are, you know, ultimately have some sort of spiritual worship, which most people point to as a worship of Lucifer, because who else is being offered as the head guy other than God, Brahma, Jehovah, Jesus? You know, you got Lucifer, which and Satan are apparently the same thing. So the Jews are waiting for a Messiah. The Zionist Christians want to crown what the scriptures seem to call a false Messiah. Christians call him Antichrist, but they don't know what they're talking about usually. Doesn't mean against Jesus. It means false Messiah, not the Messiah, someone else. Jesus was the true Messiah. That's what the Muslims and Christians have in common. They both know Jesus was the true Messiah. But the Jews think someone else is the true Messiah. And what seems to be prophesied is in the end, someone's going to be offered up as the Messiah, and it won't be Jesus. And the people that resist that are going to be persecuted if they're Jews. And so, that's, as I say, so the prophecy brings us also coincidentally right into this play around a third temple. And when you look at Revelation, the Christian scripture, it says that there's going to be this idol they're going to build in a wing of the temple, and the false prophet's going to cause it to speak and work. The false prophet's going to work miracles, and that's the thing that the Jews are going to be told to worship. See, that's going to be the rub. They rebuild the temple, but instead of getting to cut open their cows and spill the blood in the name of Jehovah, waiting for their Messiah, they're going to be told, oh no, you don't. We worship this thing over here. Here, you know, we got the sign. Here's the true Messiah. Here's your Messiah. And the Jews that resist that, they're going to be killed. I mean, at least that's the way the eschatological view goes, and it fits where we seem to be coming right now. And the last thing I want to mention is the way the Russia-USA, suddenly everything's repaired, right? Russians are happy. They're expecting sanctions to be lifted. We can normalize relations with Russia. Nobody seems to talk about the fact that they've got an army as big as ours and they're threatening. You know, all of this seems to be, no big deal. We had the Cold War. But yet a month ago we're talking about we're as close to war with Russia as we've ever been since the Cold War. And yet all we needed was Trump to come in, and that's it? We can all go back to normal relations with Russia? I mean, are you people crazy that are watching the your televisions and believing that this is the real world? Are you crazy? Is that possible, that whatever was going on with Russia that caused us to have sanctions as a government against them, whatever was going on that's caused us to be building up on NATO on their border, you mean none of that is going on now that Donald Trump is president? Oh, we'll just change everything? I mean, what it says to me, you guys, is the play that they've always been going to make, like 9/11. This event is like 9/11. 9/11 caused a shift in everybody's consciousness, and it was such a huge deception and a huge shock to the system that it allowed drastic alterations to be undertaken right under everyone's nose with just very little resistance. And I think that's what's going on now. This is a shock to the system that's meant to really imbalance everyone, so that the drastic alterations that were planned for this time can be put into place without people really like, oh, well, Donald Trump did it. You see what I mean? Oh, I knew it. Donald Trump did it all of a sudden. At least that's what I see coming. Donald Trump made friends with Russia. Donald Trump built a wall. Donald Trump. As if the American people are no longer, I mean, it's really up to, I guess we got to beg Donald to see what he's going to do. And then we'll find out what the Donald wants to do with America. And we can all go, oh, okay. You know, because of course the senators, they don't represent us. Since they're Republicans, they're just there to do what the Donald says. Is that what you believe, you people that watch television? If that's the case, then it's obviously set up to be that way. So you have to ask, who's got the money to set that up? Okay, you can narrow that down to a small group. What could be their plan? What kind of plan calls for that sort of control? This sort of drastic disillusionment of the public to drive them to, civil war, even if the civil war is only in the television set, like in Wag the Dog. What war? There's no war. Yeah, there is. I saw it on television. So if the news guys are telling you that we're fighting, then we're fighting. If the news guys are showing you that we're killing each other, then we're killing each other. And so I say that this is all a very interesting time to be watching how this develops, and to keep your eye. What we're waiting for in the eschatological view is a 7-year covenant that's got to do with rebuilding that temple. And it might just be, for the last year or so, I've been saying that ISIS has to be defeated, and then the vacuum that's created can be taken over by this other caliph, the Sunni caliph, who's the Hashemite king, and who's been claiming it. His father was claiming it. They've been claiming it since the British told them they'd give it to him. So they've been claiming it for 100 years, but nobody's given it to him yet. They've been holding him back and holding him back. And I expect that that's what the first seal of Revelation refers to, is the release of that righteous-looking king who goes forth conquering and to conquer. But now I wonder if we're going to move into the next phase of this, that's all going to happen quite rapidly as ISIS is being defeated, and the people he's going to go forth conquering and to conquer are primarily what we're going to say is left of ISIS, this radical Islam in the Middle East, in all the Sunni countries. He's going to go as the elected leader to root them out. Now, will that come after the deal to rebuild Jerusalem or before? My instinct was before, because it seemed like we had a long way to go. But this is one of those cataclysmic changes, and I'm inclined at this moment to think that they're both coming in the very near future now, sometime in the next. I don't know how long they can maintain all of this destruction and dismemberment of the Middle East before it, it's been going on for a decade now. I suppose it could go on for a few more years, but it seems like we're getting close to a transition. And I've always said I think that it's got something to do with this election. and that the election provides the platform for the great transition. And so anyway, I think that's what we're coming to now, is the great transition down toward this 7-year covenant and the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the opening of the first seal of Revelation that will let out this Muslim king to go forth conquering and to conquer. So hope that helps in your study. Thanks for being here. We'll talk to you